Work. Hello everyone. Are you ready with work with the users? Yes, sure. We need to speak not only about the openness, but about usage too, and this is what we will speak about. So please introduce the participants of your discussion, and I'm leaving this stage. So now I invite to join our panel discussion Sergiy Petukhov, Deputy of the Ministry of Justice of Ukraine on European integration. Mr. Sergiy, I saw him, he'll join us soon. Mr. Vitaliy Shabunin, the Center of Counteraction of Corruption. Mr. Bigus, he's the founder of Yanukovych Leaks. No, that's not true, no. So he's a very well-known investigator and the presenter of the TV program Our Money. And Nefyodov will join us later. And where is Sergiy Petukhov? So let's consider that he will hear us soon and he'll join us soon now. So let's begin. Today we'll speak about whether the opening of the data can be the weapon in the counteraction with corruptions, whether open data is enough, or maybe you need some further steps for it to be efficient. Today Ukraine has a paradox situation. On the one hand, you can't say that nothing is being done. If we're speaking about the system of the procurement, ProZorro, it has become well known as the most transparent system, so it got lots of awards. We can talk about beneficiary register openness of the Ministry of Justice. So now we've got some of their achievements, and they are not that little. All of us know that Ukraine improved its place in the ranking of open data barometer, jumping the 18 stairs from the 62nd to the 44th place in this ranking. But in this time we see that our breakthroughs are not over with some substantial court verdicts. We don't see any of the punishment. We don't see the money coming back, which were got in a legal way. If we look at the rankings and anti-corruption indices, the index of corruption of Transparency International, in 2016 Ukraine was at the 131st place out of 176. Today, here at the stage, we are having the champions of anti-corruption movement in Ukraine. And finally, we have Sergiy Petukhov here. So, whose name are associated with the changes, with the reforms, with transparency, and with the breakthroughs, which we are still able to do. So please, dear colleagues, I've got the first question for all of us. What can and what can't do open data? What's their magical force? And what stage is this force over at? Hello everyone. The first and the most important thing is open data can't put anyone to jail or just take his property. Open data can help us see the crime, and it's already happening, but the monopoly for the punishment, and in our understanding it's the criminal verdict and jail, has the state. The state bodies, which is court, general prosecutor, and so on. The open data can do two key, or maybe three key things: to find the corruption crime or its signs, to find the scheme, who committed this crime, or maybe this is a systematic crime, and the third one, to create a situation for the law enforcement bodies which didn't have the proper response, and the heads of those bodies that had at least political responsibility. The nice example are e-declarations, which showed for the whole world colossal signs of crimes of lots of state officials, both of illegal enrichment, which is a criminal article, and lies in the declaration, which is the criminal article. So this information, the great massive of information, official one, which is proved by the documents, wasn't correlated in the criminal verdicts. So I'll emphasize, this is not the responsibility of the open data. This is not responsibility of the system. how to count those property, or the responsibility that we have bad open registers and we can't approve that this and that state official forgot to do that. We see it and we approve that. We can prove it, but the problem is in the second part, that the data you found with different tools would be correlated into the actions of the state bodies. The strategy is the only one. To make the situation when you can find crime with the help of big data or analysis of data, some of the obvious crime, if it's not correlated with the change of the political policy, with the whole policy, and nobody is put to jail, then the responsibility should be held by the political elite who has to provide the end result. That is why open data, and there is an enormous set of open data in Ukraine, is not always correlated with an end result. This is only the first, of course, undoubtedly very important, but still the first step. We Ukrainians are the first country in the world who has public, that is open, register of beneficiary. Well, I mean, legal entities who has the register of legal entities who has information about propers. The UK was the second one. Yes, the system is not perfect. We can't guarantee, and Ministry of Justice can't tell that this beneficiary is real, but this is the next step. Still, we were the first in the world. We have something to be proud of. In the majority of countries in the world, you can't find property knowing the surname of its owner or any other property according to the surname. You see. Okay, thank you, thank you. So going on with the question with the register of beneficiaries, Mr. Sergiy. Well, of course, it's a substantial step, and not even all of the European countries have the register, but still in the Ukrainian register we see some of the households who can be end beneficiaries of the properties from the Cyprus or Belize. We do understand that it's just some of the it's just the fake one, which is the screen one or a cover. So does the Ministry of Justice have the vision how to change this situation? Hello everyone, the situation in the National Bank was cardinally different, and their experience can't be used in the register of the beneficiary owners of the companies. The National Bank had approximately 180 banks, now less than 100, and they have a separate department, people who are working, checking these data. They claim documents, and they have a certain toolkit of influence on the people who don't open the information. Besides the situation that this information comes to the end beneficiary, they can do that according to the legislation to check their financial capability to be the owner of the bank, and if they are not satisfied with this information, they can take certain steps up to closing the bank. It's impossible in the case of the register of the companies, because now in the register there's approximately 1,200,000 something companies, which out of which 200,000 gave the information about their beneficiary owners. So with such a quantity of data, it's impossible to work in the regimen of the individual attention for each company. Yes, really, we are the leading ones in this process. Still, there are not so many countries who are having the public register which is open for everyone. There is the register where these beneficiary owners need to be declared, but it's still not open for the wide society. And just now, not a single person has an understanding in the world how to check the beneficiary owners in the registers which are open. We communicate with the colleagues, and we're trying to find different options, but still I can tell it again, we don't have 100% option which would be working and which was done, for instance, by the National Bank, or which can be done by the owners of the media who have to open their beneficiary owners too. We don't have it. I think that we need to invent a way for, I think it will be the principle of applications when the company has to inform the beneficiary about the beneficiary owner and the responsibility or potential consequences for the non-truthful information, or which can be used if you find it. We can't find the way which everybody would like it, which could be automatically checked. It would be possible only when this practice would be widely spread, when we have automatic exchange of information between the states as for the legal entities and physical bodies and who are mentioned as beneficiary owners. So we greet here Max Nefyodov. Thank you for joining us. We have already said that opening of e-declarations is already an unprecedented step of Ukraine towards transparency and accountability. Denise, I have a question for you. National Agency on Anti-Corruption is the body which could show the efficiency of their work and to speed up the check of the main bulk of e-declarations, at least of the top officials. But it's not done. And according to the information in August, there were only 244 declarations checked. It's of more than 1 million. One of the reasons of this inefficiency is because it was handmade. As far as we know, there is some software which we can use to check those declarations, which you used in your investigations. Did you offer our agencies this software? And is it possible, with the help of this software, really to provide those checks? Hello, everyone. First of all, I will say that Vitaliy, in his speech about that open data are not responsible for putting people in jail, it was too optimistic. Open data itself can't even prove the crime. They can't prove the scheme. They can't do anything on their own. They still exist, and that's it. But to do all of that, at least on the educational level, can be done by analysis of these data. And if we have a certain analogy, the open data is, for instance, oil. If we compare it to oil, we are the first ones, at least, to have this oil extracted. But the next stage we are dealing with, and lots of organizations are dealing with, is the transformation of this oil into fuel. And this is analysis already. And the third stage, to put someone to jail, is the stimuli, the engine we can pour the fuel in. So far we don't have this engine, but still it's cool that we know how to play with all of those inflammable substances. As for the software, it's a kind of analytical model. It's a system of analysis of the bulk of data we are having, and it's totally official and taken from the agency web portal. It's a certain set of parameters which allow these data to be processed, compared, and find some suspicious moments. Out of what we know for today, is being used by a great quantity of journalists. It's being used by several official institutions, just because it's open and it can be used both by the agency too, but still they need their own and maybe a much more powerful tool than we have, but still. This is the thing which we are constantly improving. So I'm out of time, right? Okay. Oh, I'll be over soon. So we're trying to improve it all the time, and it allows us to find not only some of the inadequate things happening. So as our experience is showing, for the using a human who is doing that, we can describe and systematize 1-2 people a day using one analyst. This is not the same which the agency does. They have a different procedure which is more formalized and so on, but still, for instance, knowing the short-term check, which is not done by agency at all, somehow, this is how we do it. Thank you. I'd like to include into our conversation Max Nefyodov. Max, we have already spoken here about Prozoro system, about its principle. Everybody sees everything. So the maximum accessibility of information for the society. So I have a question for you. How can open data become the whole idea, guarantee of success and anti-corruption, counteraction for corruption in the procurement? Hello, everyone. Open data, well, I will agree with what was mentioned. On their own, they can't put anyone to jail, and of course, they can't be the medicine for anything. But still, if we lack information, even theoretically, to speak about some fight analysis and so on, it would be just naive. It's just physically impossible. So this condition is necessary, but it's not enough. But just having the necessary part of the program, we have already done it. So, whether it's helping or not, first of all, I consider that this is the question of not of the practical sphere, but more a philosophical one. Because I'm sure that state institutions don't have any information. All the information they have is the information which is owned by the citizens, and a priori it has to be accessible. It's a big problem, because the majority of state officials consider it differently. The state officials who are working in our Ministry of Economy, or Ministry of Justice, or Ministry of Finance, they are naturally treating it differently. They think that it's a certain asset, a certain idea they have, and just to share it with anyone is just to give it away. It's not the right thing to do. We're not speaking about some bad motivation to sell something or to bring something out in a hidden way on your flash drives. I can tell about this information for hours, because I started my career buying some of the information. But this requirement must be shared. The main problem is philosophical. They are sincerely considering that when we are saying, let's open the data, let's create the ecosystem, the business will take it and build around that some products and job places, some of the profits and taxes. They are saying, business? Why? They will earn money on that. Well, yes, this is the idea. They will earn. We are giving oil and someone will create fuel out of that, and then electric car, and then the space shuttle, and that's it. So this problem is more philosophical. I think we should fight with it on all of the levels with an understanding that there is no closed data. I understand. I'm not mentioning the data which is personal health data or any other. I mean, of course, the data of more... Well, we are speaking about corruption during this panel discussion, so still, I consider this a bit closer data. It's very important. The second one is what to do with this data. In our work, we see that it's a powerful tool. It's the tool which itself doesn't guarantee to open any criminal case, but still open data is not just terabyte of information, some signs or posts. They give opportunities which we never had before. They give an opportunity of... Well, the corruption guys are rather limited guys. They're not so genius. They're not Bernie Madoff who are building such a very hidden pyramid for a long time. But before that, they couldn't be caught. The chance that you will be caught was so little. I always keep on saying that the most horrible weapon is statistics. In Prozoro, the much more interesting thing is not to look at a separate tender. Even a specialist can find so much in a separate tender. So I don't like some of the news when they said everyone is a corruption, why Maidan was happening, nothing is changing. But if we take 1,000 of tenders, or at least 100 of tenders from one acquirer, we can have everything understandable. You don't have to be a specialist. We can just compare several parameters. The average level of deviation in the comparison of this client to this customer. There are some customers which have this level 5 times bigger. Why is that happening? That's why we are creating the automatic system of risks management, what was mentioned by Denise, to automatize it, the analysis part. Thank you. So, we've got an understanding that not only just common people, the citizens, don't know how to use this data so far, at least don't know that well, but the state officials don't understand why they should give out this data. So what's the role of the proper communication, including state, in the explanation of the data which is being opened, as all of the institutions of executive branches have to open all of the data sets, and they will do that in accordance to the decree of the Cabinet of Ministers, and the citizens need to interpret them. So sometimes our love for betrayals, because we see everything in a worse light, we think everything is betrayal for us. Well, I think that open data as it is, of course, is not needed by anyone. This is the oil which can be extracted from the soil, and that's it. So the open register of Ministry of Justice doesn't make anyone happier in Ukraine. Okay, Denise becomes happier, and Victor, yes, they're perverts, you know? You know, guys, you are perverts, totally. Yeah, think about your behavior, because it's these things doesn't make people happier. But if people don't give certain certificate to Prozoro, because this information can automatically be downloaded, and they need to print one document fewer, they value it, because this is the result which is built upon the open data. And the communication, which seems to me has to come from the state, it has to be on the philosophical level. We're opening the data sets because they belong to people, in spite of the situation that it could be complicated, some additional work and so on. These data has to be open, and later on the state structures, state enterprises and private business and the civil sector and the activists, anybody can build on these open data the products, and these products are useful. How can this oil will be transformed into fuel by fracking? I don't think that anybody should be interested in this process. And yes, we will see during the half day of this day some of these products during the presentation of Open Data Challenge. I have the question for Vitaliy. You said that open data helps us to find some of the corruption, crimes and schemes. What do we need to have some of the precise steps after opening of these data? Well, can I? So our organization has separate projects. We as an organization emerged on the situation when the investigators and Ukrainian journalists are objectively one of the best in the world. Their investigations are differing not only because of assumptions, but they're mostly proved by the information which is official. After opening the registers, such an approval of the data has become more and more. The problem, well, okay, let's use this engine analogy because it's really cool. We even have not only lots of oil, but fuel even. We have lots of high-quality investigations. But as soon as we pour this fuel to the engine, it doesn't work. Though we have this engine, we have the court system, we have the law enforcement, but still this engine is not working. So our simplest toolkit, lots of people are using it, we just took the journalist investigations at first in the state procurement, we translated it into the dry judicial language and sent it officially to the body which had to react on this violation of law without us even. We just leaked or just poured this fuel to the engine and just kicked this engine for it to work. This project had the name Ukrav, that is stolen, UKR.AW. Ukrav, which means stolen, just stolen. So just look at it. We took the investigation, we translated, we sent it to the General Prosecutor Office for the responsible person, and then we kick them for them to begin the work. Without this part, very often this data or analysis of data doesn't have anything to do. So this synergy of your work will be given by the professional lawyers who understand how to create the situation for the law enforcement or the controlling organs not to close their eyes for the obvious signs of crime. Our other project, would you please show the site? I asked you. Yes, pep.org.ua. Could you open the site itself? Well, okay, don't do that, but still, try to see it. It's the hidden nuclear weapon not so many state officials know about. We have certain analysis of open data here, but this is the website where we gathered the state officials of certain levels and legal entities which are affiliated with them and some of the connected people with them. This is the common project of us, the judicial part, law part, and the communicational one, the infrastructure of the So So this database is not used by the Ukrainians, it's used by the bank community, all of the Ukrainian banks and lots of foreign banks, and the majority of the financial branches of the world. What was the problem? The norms, the regulations require from the banks, from all of the banks of the world, that when a person is coming to open an account, he's asked, are you PEP or not? Are you a public person connected with politics or not? If he says he is, there is the procedure of the checking of the legalization of his property or her property. So the problem is as follows. We didn't have the list of Ukrainian PEPs. The banks couldn't check whether he lied or didn't lie that he is a PEP. Because if suddenly the bank didn't check and the person turns out to be a PEP, the bank will have lots of fine sections. We did a very simple thing. Well, it was not that simple, but still. We systematized the data. At first by the paper applications, we took out of the state officials who are PEPs. Just for you to understand, we don't have the register of state officials in Ukraine. We just don't have it. So we had to take this data by paper, just to print it down into the table, Excel table, and having this list of surnames, we took out the data from the open registers, the declarations, thanks to the these 100 Denis Bigus and so on. In English, it would be structured, and now this is the weapon which is used not only by us, by the financial institutions of other countries. This is the example when the open data is being processed and transformed into the weapon which even we are not using, but those who are obliged to use it. What do I mean? That you are the audience which processes and makes oil, transforms oil into the fuel. The fuel itself is not the end product. The ending cycle is when the fuel leads to changes. I have a request for you. Processing the open data, transforming it, understand, or at least make it up to the end product, to the changes, or at least you should understand who needs this fuel. Try to be united, create vertical and integrated holdings. So the data needs to lead to the changes. Thank you. It looked like an ending speech, but still we have some more time. We are having some time. Yes, this is the site. So, Denis, as a famous investigator journalist, did you have any investigations? Would you please share what were the results of your investigations? You could read his Facebook profile. Could you share with us, do you have any of the precise results? Oh, my favorite question, what do you mean by precise results? Well, maybe some court case has already been happened. Did you put anyone to jail? Did you take some money, maybe? Well, first of all, for today, for us to put someone to jail, we need... No. Let's rewind and start it again. So, in fact, all of the investigations in Ukraine is the open data in this or that form, in this or that share of journalist material, of footage. It's a cool tradition, and in fact, the journalist investigations are based on the open data. Mostly they have been formed and grown on the open data, but still, the result of the journalist work is a ready journalist material. Not to put someone to jail, not to take money from someone, and not to... Oh, well, no. Maybe sometimes to create some of the disturbances. It depends on the journalist. So we found out in 3 years that it's not too good working well in the context of the expected results, expected by the citizens. Since this year, we're having now in the organizations our own lawyers. We are not outsourcing our investigations at the center of the counteraction of corruption. So, in fact, now each investigation of ours, and not only ours. We are getting information from the dozens of regions of Ukraine. We're having applications to the state institutions, and then we remind about those applications, and then remind about the reminders, and then we're having some of the court trials about, and then we remind to the court. So we had lots of not interesting, but very efficient work. So if we speak about the result, the synergy of the data, analysis of the data, journalist work as a deepened analysis of the data, and the law support after the material was issued, it gives us only, since April, about 2 dozens, maybe more, of criminal cases. Is it the result? Well, as for me, yes, okay, this is the result, but still, we can finally make the General Prosecution Office to begin this criminal case, but to investigate we can't make anyone. So in this link and this vertical holding, as Vitaliy said, I don't know, maybe the logical continuation is a certain NGO group of quick response, court and jail. But still, it's a bit banned by law for us. Still, this is a bright idea. Thank you. Now, one of the sharpest questions which has been discussed by the international community is a so-called open washing, when the data is open just for the sake of the data. It's well demonstrated by Russia, for instance. So the question for everyone, do we have any of the grounds to speak about such a practice in Ukraine? Can we speak about that? Maxym? Well, again, I don't understand what you mean the data for the sake of the data. I think that all of the data should be open, in spite of the situation, whether you need this data or don't need. This is not for us to judge. Maybe I don't need it, I don't know what to do with it, but here, I'm sure there will be some people who will get to know how to make some product out of these data. Well, I mean open washing, when the data is open just to show that we are public and transparent, but later on, that's it. Well, this is the question I was fighting a lot and thinking about that a lot. The thing we are working with e-procurement and now e-sales and e-rent and so on. This is not the question that electronic is cool, so we'll go into IT sphere because it's popular in Facebook. But the question is that I'm sincerely sure that we are in the point of bifurcation, so we are at some dilemma. There is not a single country which could be authoritative and very corrupt and still open. We are either a democratized country, gradually comes to the order of law and the normal competition at the market, or still becomes Turkmenistan, where they don't have any questions about open data, they just kill for that. So I consider that in this bifurcation point, the opening of the information and journalist investigation and the attempts to create some of the fuel to kick this engine and to find healthier part of these engines, because not everything is black and white. Something in the middle is always in the law enforcement and everywhere in the courts. So we're pushing the system from the full closeness, when everything is so cool, everything is so close, behind the closed doors. We are pushing it to the situation when we do hope, after the journalist investigation, we won't have to do anything else, because of the shame, they will be just fired. This is the situation which we can't find in the West even. We shouldn't be idealists and we shouldn't read science fiction. If we take Italy, for instance, about lots of political officials, we know lots of things, and we can even argue with the people with bad reputation who has worse situation in Ukraine or Italy. The same we can say about lots of politicians. It's not black and white, but it's much whiter. This is where we try to get. Denis, would you add whether the opening of the data is just the shadow, is just the curtain, smoke curtain? Listen, the opening of the data is like wind, is like sand. They just exist. You can see it, you cannot see it, but still they are not the smoke curtain or anything useful. They just exist. This opening can be turned into this curtain, into this smoke one, and just to go to the international arena and say, guys, everything is open here. We don't need everything here. Let's not do anything with law enforcement. We have the new data set. This is the smoke curtain. I was smiling here because we were speaking about anti-corruption and so on, but still, those are things which are interesting for a very certain circle of people. And in the context of open data, I thought, what can be told to the common people? Why they need... Oh, it's an awful formulation, common people, I wouldn't say that. But still, for those people who are not interested in the open data, why they need it? Let's say citizens. Yes, citizens. So, the only thing I'm thinking, when we open all of the data, you won't need to bring the Xerox copy of your passport to each of the state institution you're applying for. It's so simple, but still, we will save so many amazing forests, at least for that. Vitaliy, you wanted to add? Once we had an idea to make the coalition to write down into the coalition agreement the changes to the constitutions. A very simple change. Maxym will approve that. Otherwise, I will just quarrel with him on Facebook. So we wanted to write in the constitutions that the state and all of the institutions don't have the right to claim the information from the citizen, which the state already has, which is already owning, or already dealing with it. In other words, when I'm coming to take some of the certificate, the state doesn't have to ask from me some 10 more certificates. It's not my problem that this body doesn't have an access to the database. I paid for it to have the certain access. Once we will bring this norm into the Constitution, which will make this systematization of the packages of information obliged. I do agree, open data itself is cool. We can't have not enough of open data. The more the better. Who needs, they will find it. But the problem is created when our Ukrainian politicians are coming to the International Monetary Fund or the European Union and saying, our system of e-declaration is one of the best in the world. Amen, and so on. Okay, but the question is, who is put to jail? No, it's a different question. It doesn't deal with the open data. So, open data, as it is, the more the better. But the result of Ukraine is not only the open data, because it's a tool, but in the changes they can lead to. I can only add that we have such a law. Ukraine doesn't have, the state doesn't have the right. But the problem is the implementation into practice. Sergiy, what do you think about that? What should we do after the opening of the data? Free microphone. Everybody is speaking what's painful for him. I will speak about a different thing, okay? Okay, and about the different too, but first about this one. So I thought what to speak about the citizen, with the citizens, what is done for you personally. We've got lots of things. We were making jokes about now it's easier when you get married. You don't have to think what he or she has. You can look what she has, which property he has, if he's in the register of the people who are in debt, if he's in the register of the corruptioners, whether it's a drawback or maybe not. This is for the people who are getting married to decide. But it's much easier to get to know lots of information if you got acquainted with this or that person. So open data gives us lots of things. It will give even more when we will be able to integrate it. For instance, when you get the certificate of birth, and then it has been automatically registered, written online, you've got the payment for that, and that's it. So the corruption, not only in the state sector, but in the private sector, you're communicating with your counteragent, the new counteragent you don't know, and open data will help to get to know much more about the legal entity, about the person, and to check that. I think that there are some services, the whole package of the information about the counteragent. So in fact, this is not only the fight with a great corruption, which has lots of attention to it, but this is the fight with the unfair situation, with the people who are in debt or who don't perform their obligations, personal obligations and property obligations. What's the dignity and the beauty of this idea that you're issuing this data and you don't even know what will happen to it, because it can be processed in a different way and it can be used in different cases in your life, just to summarize the information, to take the decisions in the insurance and so on. So really, it is very cool. Even if it doesn't lead to putting people to jail, it still has nice results. No, not like that. Okay, we could have the contradiction here and some controversy, but unfortunately we're short of time for our panel discussions. I'd like to thank the participants of this panel discussion. So summing up, wrapping it up, we can say that open data is a critically important tool to counteract the corruption. We need to work with it, we need to analyze it. For the civil society, we need not only to make some noise around some of the examples of corruption, but to begin becoming experts on how to study the data, because the 21st century is the century of the experts on data science. So let us all together become experts on data, and then we will be able to use the potential of the open data not only in the anti-corruption but to rebuild our country. Thank you.